everyone, it's Alice, and today I'm going to talk about the books I read in February. I had a pretty good reading month. I read 5 books, and my usual pace is like 1 book a week, so I guess that's a little bit more than normal. And I'm very happy with myself that I managed to read anything at all because I had a super busy month. So I'm happy I managed to squeeze some reading in. I read some really good books, and yeah, we should just talk about them. The first book that I finished was Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. This is a contemporary fiction dystopian type novel, and it's set in an America where everyone is governed by these laws that are supposed to preserve American culture. And we meet this 12-year-old boy, and his mother was a Chinese American poet who left the family when he was 9. And he lives with his father, and all they're really trying to do is to just avoid other people's attention because the society is really messed up. But then one day, this letter arrives to our main character, and it's very clearly from his mother, and this pulls him into a sort of quest to try and find her. So you may know that I'm a huge fan of Celeste Ng. I love her books, especially the book Little Fires Everywhere. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and I love the way this author writes characters. Like, it always just gets me. This is her first sort of foray into dystopian fiction, as far as I'm aware of. Like, her other books are just straight up contemporary fiction, and I love a good dystopian novel, so I was very excited. It just felt like it was going to be the perfect mix. I am sad to say, though, that this didn't quite hit me in the way that her other books have. Of course, we have to take into consideration that I went into this with really high expectations. Not only because it's a novel by Celeste Ng, but also because it's dystopian fiction, which is one of my favorite genres. So I think I went into this expecting certain things. In some ways, it does resemble her other 2 books in that it focuses on a family and family dynamics. But we also have this bigger thing going on with the American government in this book. I do think the dystopian concept of this is really interesting, and there is a lot of food for thought in what goes on in here and the things that we're told about, and I did really like that. But I don't know if I feel like the way it was presented worked that well for me. Because the thing is, the thing that I have taken away from Celeste Ng's other books are the characters. Like I mentioned, I love the way she writes characters, and those are always, like, that's the part that sticks with me from her other books. It's always the characters, and I always feel this amazing connection to them, and I didn't really feel that in this. And it's one of those cases where I feel like the characters are there to show us the world, and because of that, I felt like there was like a detachment to them, and I don't know, I feel like what happened in this book, it was very much about showing us the world and having us think about all of these different things and these different concepts, and the characters sort of took a back seat in a way, which is strange because we are following the main character throughout this whole thing, and obviously we get a lot of his thoughts and all of that, but I just didn't feel this connection to any of the characters in here that I have in her other books. I feel like this is one of those cases where we have a lot of great elements. Like, we have a very interesting world and a very interesting society. There's a lot to think about and a lot to discuss, but there's something in the execution of telling the story that just falls a little bit flat, unfortunately. I do think that if it was a book by a different author, I probably would not be as harsh because I just feel like she can do so much better, or I know she can do so much better. But I also think even if it was written by another author, it wouldn't have worked that well for me either way. All of that being said, there are some really amazing moments with the writing in here, and again, the concept of the story is really good, and it really did make me think. So there are parts of it that are going to stick with me, but overall, it feels like a sort of middle-of-the-road book for me. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I am sad about it, though, because I just thought it was going to be, like, I thought it was going to blow me away, and then it just didn't. Maybe that's just me, but here we are. Secondly, I picked up Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is a YA mystery, and it's set at this private academy in the mountains of Vermont, famous for being founded by this eccentric billionaire whose wife and child were kidnapped in the 1930s, and the case of that was never solved. We meet this young girl in present day who is admitted to this school, and she's a true crime buff. And her goal for going to the school is to sort of solve this unsolved case. But then while she's there, death returns to the school. Alright, so I have a lot of thoughts about this book. First of all, I really enjoyed it. Like, when I was in it, I was having such a good time with it. It is YA, so it's obviously geared towards a slightly younger audience than me, and in parts it does feel quite young, but for the most part we're just following this girl who's trying to find her place at this school and looking into this really intriguing mystery. The setup of this old mystery I actually thought was really cool. We have this poem that is pretty creepy, and then the setting of the school is obviously amazing. It is made by a very eccentric person, so the school has like some weird things to it that I really liked, and there's a lot of potential for mysteries, if that makes sense. And we actually get flashbacks to the past when all of this happened, so we get a proper like look into it, which I really enjoyed. Obviously in present day we're following a main character who's trying to figure some of this stuff out. She has like investigated, or she's looked into this case a lot before she came to the school, so we get to learn a little bit about that. And then, of course, there was a lot in here about teenagers just being teenagers, which I didn't find that interesting. But like, all of the mystery stuff in between is really cool. And then there is also another mystery that happens like in the middle of the book that adds another layer to it. Generally, I'd say that I was pretty sucked into this. Like, I was really into it when I was reading it. There's a lot going on, there's a lot to explore, and there is something compelling about it that just makes you want to keep going, and it is also quite easy to read. It does drag in parts, but overall I was really enjoying it. And then I got to the end, and it feels almost wrong to call it an end because it felt like the story didn't end. Like, we spent all of this time like delving into these different mysteries, and then the book ends sort of where you feel like you're 2/3 of the way through the book, and then it just ends. And it does say just like to be continued, but I was a little bit surprised that we didn't wrap up at least one of the mysteries, and we kind of get some answers but not really, and then it just ended. It was just over. It didn't even really feel like a cliffhanger to me. It felt unfinished. And I knew going into this that this is the first book in a series, and I thought like, we're probably not going to solve the old mystery in this book. That's fine. But I thought at least we would solve the other mystery like fully. And the fact that we didn't honestly feels a little bit weird to me. The fact that this happened knocks this from a 4-star to a 3-star for me, which I'm so annoyed about. Like, god damn it. I will read the second book because I want to know what happens, but my god, it's really annoying. I guess the fact that I'm this annoyed and I still want answers is probably a good sign, because I want to know what happens. Like, it is very intriguing, and it does have a lot of really great elements to it, which is why I want to keep going as well. But yeah, the ending of this was like a non-ending. Moving on, I read something completely different. It was A Brief History of Black Holes by Dr. Becky Smethurst. And this is like a non-fiction science history book, and it's all about black holes and how they fit into our universe and what they actually are, which is not really what you think, or at least they are not what I thought they were. I generally really enjoy these types of books. I really love learning about space and getting to know what we know about it. I really did not know a lot about black holes before going into this, and it does say on the cover here, why nearly everything you know about them is wrong. This is very accurate, because what I thought I knew was not accurate. I know more now though, which is kind of the purpose of reading these types of books, and I quite enjoyed it. I do feel like some of this went a little bit over my head. It is readable, but there are some parts where it gets a little bit technical in a way, and I don't know if I fully feel like I got the full picture, but that's not the book's fault, it's my fault for just not really understanding everything. I really like how this combines science and history though, and I don't know if I really realized how much history was going to be in this book, even though the title literally says A Brief History, but it explores a lot of not just these concepts and what we know, but also how humans got there and the different scientists that sort of got us to where we are today. And when we explore that, we also explore a lot of other things about space and science in general, which was really cool. Overall, really enjoyed this, and I don't really know if I have that much more to say about it, except that I feel like I learned a lot. And it's like a solid 4 out of 5 star read for me. I am also now slightly annoyed, along with the author, with the fact that we call black holes, because now that I know more about it, I know that that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I vote for the term dark stars because I just feel like that sounds cool. Second to last, I read a book that we really need to discuss. It's I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. And this is a dystopian novel. It's translated from French. And it's about this woman who grows up in a cage with 39 other women. Our main character doesn't remember anything from the time before, and the other women in the cage who are slightly older than her, they are like varying ages, but she's the youngest. They have only like vague recollections of the time before as well, and no one knows how they got into the cage or what happened really to put them in the cage. They don't know what they're doing there, and they don't know what the purpose is, and they're constantly watched over by these guards that like walk around the cage all day and all night, but they never speak. And then something happens that changes everything. So the minute that I saw this book and I read this title, something in me told me that I just needed to get this book. There's something about the way the title flows, there's something about the fact that it's dystopian. I just had this feeling about this book when I got it, and I was right. This book is insane, and I feel like it's dug its way into my brain, and I can't stop thinking about it. The only issue with this is that it's not only a book that's difficult to describe, but it's also the kind of book that I don't want to talk too much about what happens in it, because I feel like the best way to go into it is to not know that much. Like, the only thing that I knew when I went into this was the thing about the women in the cage, and then something was gonna happen. And I feel like it's best to just go in as blind as possible, but I also am dying to like discuss what happens in this book and the whole thing, because it's so different. And we're also following a main character who only knows this life, and it's just so interesting. This is definitely a unique one. It's different from anything else that I can remember having read, and it has this haunting quality to it from the very beginning that I just instantly loved. It's desolate and sad and eerie, and I just feel like the way everything was described in this and like the voice of it was so interesting, and I just absolutely adored it. I just couldn't stop reading it. Like, I could not get enough of this. A thing to note though is that if you are the kind of reader that wants answers to everything, this may not be the one for you. But that being said, I am the kind of reader that wants answers to everything. Like, especially in dystopian books, science fiction, fantasy, I want to know how everything works. I want answers to everything and why things are the way they are and all of that. But with this, it doesn't do that, and I feel like it was perfect. Like, it just fit the story and the journey this book takes us on perfectly. And this really made me think, and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, this is gonna be in my brain forever, I feel. When I finished this, I was wondering if I should give it a 4 or a 5 stars, but because of the way that this has stuck with me so far and the fact that I can't stop thinking about it, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. It's a little unusual, it's definitely unique, almost a little bizarre, and almost a little ruthless in a way, and I just loved it. I would recommend, if you're interested, to go in as blind as you can and just see what you find. really, really good. Lastly, I finished 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. This is a non-fiction book. It's a memoir of sorts, I guess, and it's a book of letters between the author, who's an American, and the people of this bookshop in London. Mainly one guy, but she also sends letters to some of the other people there. And it starts off with her sending a letter asking for books that she can't find in New York. And then through these letters, throughout like 2 decades, this friendship starts flourishing. This is a book that a lot of people have recommended to me, and I know that a lot of people like, and I am now also in that group of people who really like this book. I don't know if I've ever read a book of letters before. This might be my first one, but I really, really enjoyed it. This one though, even though I thought I was going to like this when I picked it up, I was surprised by how funny it was. Like, there's a lot of wit in this that I just wasn't really prepared for, and it was just a lot of fun to read. There is something really charming about reading these letters from an American who's very informal and sometimes even outrageous, and then getting these letters back from this Brit who's a little bit more reserved, and it takes some time for him to sort of warm up, and just seeing that friendship flourish was just, it was lovely. Now, this particular edition that I have also includes the sort of sequel to this, I guess, which chronicles the author actually taking a trip to England a couple of years after the letters sort of conclude. And I read that as well, but I definitely preferred the letters, I would say. For me, this was a very solid 4 out of 5 star read. I really enjoyed it. It was lovely, charming, quick to read. It was really quite funny, like it made me chuckle in several parts, and I get why everyone likes it, because it's a very likable book. It's easy to read and easy to like. Okay, that was the last book. Those were all the books that I've read in the past month. A solid month for sure, but I'm excited to move into March. Maybe spring will arrive here soon. I really hope so, because I'm so over this winter. It's been a lot. Like, the weather has been crazy this winter, and I'm just very excited for all the snow to go away. No more ice, just spring. And maybe I'll get into some spring books. Hopefully, we'll see. Anyways, I'd love to know what you all have been reading in the past month, and as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!